also got your fucking chronology fucked up. And this is what I mean. The whole issue. We're not even really having a debate, are we? Right? Even right now, all of us here. I mean, Stephen's not having a debate at all. But no, we're not having a debate about the press and freedom of the press and how organizations interact with the press. What we are doing is we are trying to act as the voice of reason to another debate that happened on social media, which was who's a bigger asshole, Reginald or Thorin? And then another sub debate, why can Thorin get away with being a racist? Now, the first issue is ridiculous. Reginald had been the lightning rod for that fucking team. He took more shit from the same community that are now espousing him as the next Princess Diana figure. You know, the same people, the same names. Look in their commenting history. It's incredible. Simply because he has collided with someone they currently consider to be a bigger asshole. That is not the debate. Who is the bigger asshole is not the debate. And then this idea, right, it was at best a ill thought out pop culture reference based on a trope that existed from the league community itself. Everyone used to fucking insult Reggie based on his looks and compare him to a monkey. That used to happen on Twitch chat all the time. It is disgusting and fucking deplorable that that happened. But anyone who thinks that Thorin was making the same comparison without referencing that, and therefore that slightly alters the context, again, you are too dumb to have the discussion. I am sick of this curious Americanism, which is we have to hold people in positions of authority, of positions of public presence, to a higher standard than we would hold ourselves. And the same community that are lambasting Thorin for being a racist are the people that invented the trope that Thorin was referring to. Equally, as none of us are mind readers. None of us are mind readers, right? Can we truly talk to his intentions when he made that pop culture reference? Anyone who has watched the movie knows what Caesar is a direct reference to. It is not the fact that his visage is that of an ape. And it is ridiculous that, again, we get to this debate, which is a fucking side issue, to a discussion that should have been treated with a little bit of reverence and respect. Because you may not think it's important now, but trust me, 2 years from now, maybe, it can go either way. Maybe organizations rule the roost and we're back to a land of dull as ditch water, bland, insipid, sponsored reporting, and stories like what we've seen in the last 12 months, some real hard-hitting stuff like ESGN, like Sapinda, stories like that. They never come out again because you guys are saying we should respect what the organizations want, and you don't treat the tenets of journalism with any respect whatsoever. Or it could go the other way, and maybe you guys are going to wake the fuck up and realize that journalists have got a job to do, and sometimes it's not always going to be something you agree with, but we shouldn't look to fucking constrain people's freedoms and the right to criticize just because we find something unpalatable.
All right, so we've seen the go ahead, Cody.
Yeah, I like I said earlier, in that really impassioned speech by Richard, I think went like a long way.
Well,
they cut him off.
Yeah.
They muted him. They got him.
Get him.
What?
Just lose him here.
Yeah, there you go.
Wait.
Okay, yeah,
Sorry, video again.
Filtered as fuck, dude.
This to me, really, on a fundamental difference, is no different than
Start your video.
MLG and DreamHack going blow for blow. This is no different than EG and MLG going blow for blow. It is these are two esports organizations. Like, they're really big, high-profile organizations. I think that's one of the issues right now is just the premier esports organization on gamers is just as big as any other esports organization in the space. I commented earlier, they're a topic of news just as much as any other esports organization. They're banned from Reddit. TSM will do interviews with them. This isn't their first blacklist. It's Slasher's here in the chat. EG couldn't interview on gamers couldn't interview EG for a couple of months. This just sort of comes and goes. I think the publicity of it all made everyone sink their teeth into it, and I think like Richard suggested, that this was just construed just in such a crazy way. And then it becomes really difficult because if you want to argue the point, like you have to dig through several layers of bullshit and public opinion about things that aren't even necessarily relevant to it. Like,
all right, let's talk about. Okay, so there's an apology that's been issued that we're looking at right here on the screen, and there's statements from Thorin too. What comes of all this? Is TSM still not going to give interviews on gamers?
Well, that's the thing. The ball is in Reginald's court, right? Like,
this apology is a public appeal to rectify that situation.
It's a please help. I love the first sentence. Let's pull up the first sentence is so Thorin. It's very reminiscent of the tweet that Thorin sent out immediately after.
I mean, he's apologizing for the Caesar reference.
Well, the thing is, it's like it reminds me very much so of the apology he said via Twitter after the IEM incident, where he was like, I'm sorry if you were offended.
I'm sorry, all of you guys were offended.
I apologize for my off-color remark regarding Reginald, which carried perceivable implication that he resembled an animal, comma, in any sense. What a fantastic Thorin sentence that is. And I don't know. So the ball's in their court. It's just like it's just everyone here is everyone who shows up to the party in this case just fucking loses out. And I'm a fucking pug now. What the fuck's going on?
You gotta start your video, man.
Okay. I mean, I've worked with Richard, or I've worked with Thorin closely, rather, and I didn't know him at all before I started working at On Gamers, and I knew that he was very abrasive, and I grew to respect him a lot as a colleague. I don't think he's a racist, personally. I think he's oftentimes too quick-witted for his own good. But that shit happens.
I gotta say as well, though, Cody, sorry to just interrupt this end. I see a lot of people trying to make out that I'm trying to defend Thorin because we're gay lovers or whatever the childish insinuation is, or we're UK bros. Just to put a little bit of context, because again, you people are ignorant, and it's important that we challenge ignorance. It's essential that we challenge ignorance wherever we encounter it. Just so you know, mine and Thorin's relationship began when I said some horrendous things about him relating to some health issues he'd had, which I'm not proud of at all. They were disgusting remarks. Probably the worst thing I've said about another human being in all my years of being alive, and I've said some pretty heinous shit. What the hell did you say? Yeah, right, okay. So we buried the hatchet based on a professional basis, but I wrote the article that and drew attention to the ESL thing. It was me who reported it. It was me who broke that story, which everyone is now using to bury him. The idea that I'm like, I know, like part of his fucking PR team. Again, it's absurd. All you have to do is use Google, you fucking retards. It's not hard. Seriously. Like, if you've got access to the internet, like, can you really not use Google? Because this is all you have to do. You could probably go to my Twitter history if you really wanted to and find the tweets. I don't think I ever delete anything, which I probably should, but nothing's ever really deleted on the internet anyway. But, you know, if you were to have Thorin on the same show as me, he would probably partially attribute some of the shit he's getting now for my initial report about the ESL issue. And I think he might be right. So I'm not part of his fucking extended PR team. You guys, honestly, it's incredible that you can spin these things and just by virtue of repetition, you think they're true. They're not. All facts point to the contrary. Sorry, anyway.
I missed the podcast, but I can echo it. I had a very brief 6-month stint where I was working with Thorin and editing a lot of his stuff, and he never struck me as a racist. I don't think that's the real issue. I don't even think it's an issue about journalistic access in esports. It's your allusion to football and the BBC like sort of made me think it, but it's just like so crazy that like, you know, journalism in esports is reported on by other journalists on other websites half as much as this real news is. maybe it's just because On Gamers is so big. It's just I I think these are just two titans of esports that they've decided now is the time to throw down. When I was working there in February, I knew we had access problems at TSM. I heard that once a week. We couldn't talk to EG. This isn't the first time.
No,
this is
so
just the first time that people wanted to push and shove and spit on one another about it. And we pushed and shoved and spit on one another about it, and someone apologized, and
it'll be over. So it's gonna be over tomorrow. I mean, what is this?
I think. Well, here's the thing, though, is like because I think this is a political issue. Here is, I mean, there's a certain amount of pressure that comes with it, right? When On Gamers apologizes to you, to stand up and be the man. But and if they were smart, they would have organized this ahead of time. They would have reached out, like they should have reached out to him beforehand. I mean, like all of this should have been covered beforehand, right? You know, behind closed doors. Just like I hope the apology was figured out beforehand.
Right.
And you know, because it looks kind of shitty if by Thursday morning Reginald hasn't said shit about it. Because then you don't look.
Well, I mean,
so
the problem you've got with this, of course, is the precedent is set now. I mean, there's certainly. I think there was lots of room for a private discussion to be had, and I'm not saying that these discussions haven't happened, but I find it unlikely given that E3 is on and a lot of the people who were playing, the major players in this particular incident are busy doing other things. But this is it now, right? I mean, this is any time an organization wants to, strong arm On Gamers into not publishing something, they know what they have to do. Yeah. And I think that's incredibly sad. I think that's incredibly sad for them as a publication. I think it's at the end of the day, I think this is going to have some very damning repercussions. Whether Reginald decides to retract. I mean, perhaps less so. I mean, at least if they get the interviews, you could argue, well, we swallowed pride and we got what we want from an On Gamer's perspective. But if Reginald still turns around and goes, yeah, well, thanks for the apology, bros, but fuck your interviews.
Let's do this like boxing. Let's do this like boxing when we end this. We need to do like a round by round who wins point by point. Because you don't always win by knockout. No, that's true. How we got to appoint. I mean, like it's unfiltered. We have to appoint a winner, right?
Yeah.
So we should just do it by boxing. We should maybe do social media. I don't know. You're the host, Chan, man. I all the legwork should go on.
Isn't this like what everything in the? I mean, we talk about esports becoming real and all that shit, and we draw parallels to the real world. Isn't this kind of what everything in the real world trends to at one point or another? Is
in the real world, I think this would actually be a thing, like access to press. But in our small little world, like it's all political. It's all absolutely political.
No, but I mean, in terms of like only giving access to people that'll say good things about you, only doing interviews with people that'll give you softball. Like, doesn't this happen all the time in politics? Doesn't this happen all the time with shit like IGN? And doesn't this happen all the time with like the president and the big people only answering questions to people that they know aren't going to like absolutely slaughter them in an interview? Like, isn't this kind of par for the course? Isn't it? I mean, not to say that we should try to emulate the worst things about the real world, but I mean, it's not necessarily surprising that an organization with as much influence as TSM would try to strong arm somebody that isn't, sucking them off.
Well, let me reading, just looking at this Thorin statement, let's clarify that this apology has to do with the Caesar comment. It doesn't have to do with how, just the format or just what Sumner's insight is. You know what I mean? So it's an apology, but it's an apology for something that was kind of misinterpreted.
They said on Twitter they were going to create less toxic content in future. Which again, that T word that sends a shudder down my spine. This is interesting. I've just had a message from Kim Rom, which people will know as the editor-in-chief of On Gamers, and I think he said he'd like to come on the show and say a few words.
You want to come on?
Yeah, so I don't know if we can facilitate that happening.
What about let's get like Reggie or somebody from TSM on.
I don't know Reggie.
I'll drag him into the chat and I'll let you do some high-end production so we can get him in a window and all that. Yeah, but just while there's points here as well, obviously I still see there's a lot of hate aimed towards Thorin. In regards to, how he's, again, that people are trying to characterize him as a racist. There was a column he wrote some time ago, 2011, part of his The Cauldron series, which was a look at the underbelly of esports. It was on SK Gaming. He did something called the Dark Underbelly of Discrimination. What he talked about in that article was that basically he defended Koreans coming over to Europe. He said it was wrong of the non-Korean community to label them as, faceless, personalityless people. And, talking about some of the challenges that Korean people faced in trying to establish a foothold in the European and North American scenes. So this is not somebody who isn't racially or nationally sensitive. And he tackled a very important subject when he wrote that piece. So, again, what I despise about this sort of landscape of debate is that we have to characterize people as like either villains or heroes. And the reality is that people can say things you don't like and say things you should agree with.
Kim, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Oh, hey, Kim. Sorry, I didn't even know you were there, bro.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah.
The Hammered Hotel connection here.
So Kim Rom joining the show. What's your official title now? GameSpot.
Moron.
Yeah. Moron. Okay, so
You turn yourself up slightly, Kim.
I'm the janitor. I clean up stuff.
you have to clean up stuff. All right.
But if you can crank the volume so I can hear your lovely voice.
I can hear him fine, actually.
He needs to be louder on mine. I'll turn myself up then. Fuck it.
Okay. Well, Kim, you wanted to come on and I guess address a few things?
Hey, so I was listening. This probably won't make sense, but we're not really trying to accomplish anything by issuing an apology. We're not trying to win points. We're not trying to make a statement. We're actually just apologizing for something that was really rude and had no place on a show.
Right.
And that's really where it ends. Now, honestly, would I like to have complete access to TSM, and would I hope that Reginald changes in mind so we can interview his players? Absolutely. Of course. Who wouldn't? But that's not why we're issuing an apology. We're issuing an apology because something really dumb was said on air. And we're better than that. So when we fuck up, we admit it.
Okay, so there's the whole toxic, classification in that tweet. Is that just, I guess, that one comment that was made during the show, or is that just going to be a general negativity?
I think Foreign touches on that.
Okay.
I think if I read what he wrote, that hey, there has been several times where that show was probably too toxic, and it seems like he wants to rectify that. He wrote the statement. I didn't try to make him.
So the rectification only comes after the community backlash. Oh my god, the PR hurts. What I mean, like, going back to the apology thing. I mean, like, we've all been in this long enough to know that everything you do that's public facing carries multiple meanings behind it, right? I think it's a little bit disingenuous to say that, oh, we're only apologizing because we just want to put out an apology. It means nothing else. Like, oh, it's just, like, come on, like that's a little bit naive, I think. No, and then to say like, oh, well, we want to address the toxicity of the show now that everything is blown up in public, like. I don't know. I feel like that's a little bit insulting to put that out there like that, but that's just me.
I'm incredibly sorry that I insult you, but this is honestly the truth. Sorry. When you have a lot of people telling you that there is something toxic going on, don't you listen to it? Wouldn't you?
I mean, if I think there's something that's really fucked up, then I try to fix it before it turns into like a huge public fucking scandal, and then I wouldn't try to pass it off as, oh, like this is something that I've always wanted to do. But now, conveniently, the entire public is like crying out against me. I'm going to do something. But like, I mean, it comes out.
Desire to always apologize for anything. But yesterday, something really dumb was said in the show, and that's what I'm apologizing for.
That's just yesterday. I feel like this toxic thing. It feels
you're
like it's more
making
of
like
just
overwhelming
general
comments
what's
like, oh,
happened.
we're going to restructure
yeah,
the
what's
entire
happened
show.
in multiple episodes, or just episodes up to date. To date.
I don't think we're going to restructure things. I think we're going to say exactly what Foreign himself states.
Okay.
Which is, at certain points in conversations and in the show, there's a line to be drawn. And the line that apparently has been crossed way too many times.
I mean, look, I me, Kim, and I try and play as fast as loose as possible. I don't really like censorship as a whole, but I would agree, and I said so earlier today. I think you're probably right. A line was crossed. What I'm confused about is obviously with Reginald having already said prior to that the access was likely to be withdrawn and he told Travis that just prior to E3. It seems, I know it seems very confusing to me that then, based on that, Thorin would then go on to say what he said and be critical of Reginald if you guys were maybe aware that there was some disgruntlement on his part as well. So I'm a little bit confused because I think you guys, if Reginald is withdrawn doing interviews with you guys over this comment, which you've then apologized for, you can maybe argue that's fair enough, but the chronology points to the fact he was doing it because he was sick of being criticized on a show that you guys produced anyway.
Right.
And that's fine. And I'm not at all arguing with Reginald on that decision. I don't personally agree with it, but that's his decision to make, and that's great. The only thing I'm saying is that the comment that was made yesterday was completely inappropriate. It never belonged on the show to begin with. That's what we're reacting to.
But you wouldn't classify it as racist, though.
I'm gonna jump into. I want to defend Thorn actually in a weird thing. So I have a very common metaphor that I use. I've used it time and time again on the show. I use the phrase, two people will pound on their chest, right? And I used it in this instance. And if someone had been savvy enough, and I haven't checked Reddit yet, but like with the whole ape thing, like Thorn's downfall was he made foolishly, and I think it was probably right for him to apologize. I guess given the context, and I didn't know that, but yeah, I could have been hung up too,
sure.
Because pounding on the chest is sort of another ape metaphor. So I didn't, when I saw the VOD, I didn't think Thorn did anything that wrong in that instance.
It's context. I mean, people can take whatever they, you know what I mean. If they want to just criticize him for whatever reason, they can take it out of context. And obviously, a good number of people took it out of context. So therefore, I can, understand the apology.
It's not. It has nothing. It has nothing to do with context. I don't even know how this is like a discussion. We these are things that we learn. Fuck, I've spent the last 4 years of my life learning this. When you become a public figure and you start to represent an organization, especially something like journalism, you can't. I love Thorin to death. He's like my favorite guy, but you can't go on shows and say the things that he does. You can't do it. These opinions are my own and they don't represent. That shit doesn't work. It doesn't mean anything. You just can't go on to shows and say incredibly inflammatory statements and expect that you can just kind of carry on and nothing will happen. Like I said, we've seen this happen time and time again, even with Thorin. Remember, does anybody remember the Katowice things and the Poland comments? It's not something that can happen. He has to learn to stop doing it. I mean, I think he's funny. I like him. I don't think he's actually racist, but no amount of, well, he didn't mean it or the context it doesn't.
Steven, the Katowice thing was totally different than this stuff. Okay.
It's the exact. What do you mean? How is it
it's
totally
not
different?
No, I mean, the Katowice thing was very clear as to what he was talking. I mean, just clear cut, what he was doing there, and I agree with that. And I think he agrees with that. I don't think Thorin would even disagree with probably shouldn't talk about that kind of thing again. But this is not the same. This is he just made it. He was very careless with a reference he made, which wasn't like Cody was saying, wasn't intended to be an ape reference.
I mean,
as much as it was a Caesar thing. I mean, it's
intentions don't mean anything.
What I'm saying is that
intentions don't mean
anything.
anything. Come on, intentions are the dumbest thing in the universe. You have to take it at face value. That's your job as a public figure. You can't make some crazy statement. I couldn't go on TV and say, Obama, he's a nigga, and then be like, oh, no, I meant like mine, after it blows up on me and I lose everything that I've ever fucked. You can't do it.
Yeah, but hang on, right?
Intentions mean absolutely nothing. You have to know that by now.
Yeah, but I mean, right, okay, we're talking about fucking huge degrees. You can't just go to the most extreme example to win an argument.
I barely
follow Thorn's this huge egghead. He thought he was making a very clever, I'm positive that Duncan thought he was making a very clever movie reference that everyone would adore him for his huge egg brain. And then everyone was like, wow, this guy's a dick, man. This guy,
everybody involved in the League of Legends, you don't even have to go on 4chan to know that everybody in the League of Legends community, how many pictures are there of Reginald with the banana, how many jokes on the Twitch chat, oh my god, 2 Wukongs on TSM, everybody knows that reference.
I'll go on record as saying this, I've been thinking it all night and I haven't said it, but fuck it, we're here. Even Kim's come and he's busy at E3, so I'm going to say this, and that was, if Monty had made the joke, no one would have gave 2 fucks. Simple. There you go.
That's an interesting statement.
That's a fair point. I think
Yeah,
that's a fair
I think
point.
that's a
I don't
fair
know
point.
enough about law to.
I'm not saying Monty would have done would have made that comment at all. I'm not categorizing him like that. But what I'm saying is, I think people would have gone, oh well, Monty's this literary, he loves his pop culture references. He's very clever. He's very witty. And there isn't already a sort of when can we get Thorin fired circle jerk bubbling up under the
But
surface.
I mean, that's all part of the game. That's all
Yeah, I
part
know,
of
but
the
this is what I'm saying,
navigating.
right? You and me should not be subscribing to the fucking
Yeah, but
lowest common
you can't
denominator element of playing that game.
you
We
can't
should-
function. You have to take the world for what it is, not as you'd want it to be. There's a reason why Stefano can make a joke about fucking a 14-year-old and Orb gets fired because he rages on ladder and says nigger. Like, I mean, it's just how the world
Again,
functions. Like,
right, again, you keep bringing it to something it isn't, and you're comparing someone to a personality that happens to be a talking ape in a movie about talking apes, right? You're equating that to the N-word. I don't think that's, I don't think that's not really intellectually competent, is it? I mean, you're better than that. That is not what it is. They are not equatable to the same thing.
I don't think Thorin is racist. I think he's
The fact that
kind
we're
of a
even
pretentious
discussing.
dick. I think, but like I don't think
This
he's a
is stupid.
racist.
This
I
is
think he's a
stupid.
pretentious asshole. But I do not think he's a
not
racist.
Jesus.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody's saying he's racist, but it's not about whether or not you're. It's just about how is the public going to perceive what you do. That's every second that you spend living a life where you're under public scrutiny. When you're on public shows, when you're doing your Twitter, when you're doing the Facebooks, when you're doing anything, you always have to be mindful of, hey, how is this going to look to other people? It's like
Right.
the most basic thing that you have to consider as you start to do something.
And you're right, but then what happens is one person does something that they would have a complete, that they believe that it's going to be absolutely fine and completely above board and no one's going to react negatively to it. And then for some reason, everybody does. And then all of a sudden that standard has shifted. And now everyone's got to adhere to that standard. And we've been moving towards this insane, Americanism constantly throughout.
Well, how is this an Americanism? What?
Because it was the American people that invented the fucking morals clause, and this is where it all stems from. The morals clause, which was introduced in 1921 in Hollywood and then proliferated through sports in 1922 when Babe Ruth became the first professional athlete to sign a contract with a morals clause. That was the birth of all of this shit, that we would hold public figures up to a higher scrutiny, up to a higher standard than regular people. And that's what this is right now. 75%, as of 2003, 75% of all athletics contracts signed would have a morals clause in it. And what are we saying when we have a morals clause? We are saying that somebody that earns money or is in a position of prominence, or as you say, is scrutinized by the public, cannot behave the same way as a regular Joe. Like, for example, you might get pulled over for speeding, and your boss, he's got no right to fire you over it. But if you're a public figure and you get pulled over for speeding, press conference that day apologizing for your reckless actions. This is a disparity. This is not equality. It is not egalitarianism, and it's not something that I personally want to be moving towards, where one set of people predicated on success are held up to entirely different standards to regular folk. I don't feel comfortable with that at all.
I mean, it's a whole other discussion, but I mean, I don't think it's necessarily bad to hold public figures up to a slightly higher standard. It's not like it's all work. I mean, you're a public figure, you're making money for being a public figure, and you wield a really large influence. I mean, I mean, it's a whole other discussion on whether or not you hold public people up. I mean, that's a whole other topic. I mean, I guess you could spend hours talking
Here's
about
what I
that.
don't want to see, guys. Is I don't want to see Thorin completely vanilla. I don't want to see him change that much. I think a lot of the things that he's done on Summoning Insight and even on my show has been really good. And from the good,
And you don't want to see him completely vanilla, but at the same time, Thorin in his current state is not compatible with 2014 on the internet. It isn't.
It's
things like these are going to repeat over and over again.
I think
like
this is a great time for Kim to
98% of
chime
what
in.
Thorin has said. 98%
Yeah, I know.
of
We've
what Thorin
invited
has
Kim
said.
in, and now he's just sat
Yeah.
there like thinking, why the fuck did I agree?
Exactly. 98% of what Thorin has said on all these shows has been completely fine. Yeah, it rustles some jimmies, but that's the whole point. I mean, that's the whole point of like shows like the Unfiltered right here, shows like Summoning Insight. That's the whole point, is to push
Nah,
things.
bollocks, Chris. After this
I mean-
one, I'm writing to Twitch to get you shut down because that's how
gosh.
we do
All
things
over,
now,
Chris.
Oh
evident.
man.
So-
Okay.
So Kim,
whatever.
when you brought on
Fuck you, things apart from
Thorin, part of his
racist.
value had to have been his strong opinions, right?
Actually, there was the quality of his work more than his opinions.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's fair.
I feel like he has toned that up since he got more freedom and more time to focus on his work.
He's toned the.
interesting. Because it's worth noting that he used to be editor at Acer Esports, so when you're an editor for something like that takes a tremendous amount of your time. And Thorin is a very good writer, among one of the best, for sure, in esports.
One of the best. I mean, Thorin puts out really fucking good work for the work that he does. So, I mean, it doesn't surprise me to hear Kim say that they would hire him because of the work that he does. Sure.
So the work that he does, Kim, you're talking specifically about his interviews and his articles?
Yes.
He didn't have any shows.
I don't.
Yeah.
I don't
But
think
then
any of the
but
work that Thorin does, and Kim can, or anyone here can correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think that the work that Thorin does ever reflects his incredibly, I don't want to say edgy, but his like really aggressive kind of sense of humor is the nicest way I can put it.
It's just his
I don't think
opinions.
I don't think his work reflects that so much as it just comes off as like, I think that if you took somebody completely out of who didn't know anything and you read Thorin's work, you would be like, wow, this guy really knows his shit. He's really, really informative. He's very strong and passionate about what he does. And then you would have listened to like some of his comments he might make on a show. They'd be like, wow, holy crap, I didn't realize he was such an asshole sometimes, you know? Like, I think that they're two totally different worlds, in my opinion.
Yeah, they are two different worlds, but the fact of the matter is that he does have a show that's on Gamers, right? And I guess why was that decision made then? If
But Thorin wanted to do a show. Like,
yeah,
so
right.
on Gamers is a. I hate censoring people. I really think it's the wrong thing to do. And I hate using my own, because I like a piece of content shouldn't really mean if it should be on Gamers or not be on Gamers. The community sort of gets to decide what goes on Gamers in many ways. We try things, we see what sticks. Some of it really doesn't stick. Some of it has surprisingly high numbers. But we've tried to put together an editorial staff of people who are as different as they can be. And that's what we sort of try to allude to in our apology to Reginald. It's like we have people who do really heavy stats analysis. We have people who do investigative reporting. We have people who do, what I would almost call it like entertainment, and who doesn't ruffle any feathers whatsoever. Like we have a very interesting editorial staff with many different types of personalities. And I think together we can create something that brings value and good content to people who are, really interested in esports. And we do that in many different facets. I almost see On Gamers as a really bad analogy, but as a television station where there are many kinds of different programming and stuff to read and consume. If I take Thorin out of a talk show and I just look at the written content, I think it's some of the best in the industry. If I put him into a talk show and I look at what happens when he goes and makes a talk show together with Monte Cristo, I think it is undeniably the best talk show that there is in esports, at least in terms of viewership. Now, unfortunately, toxic things have been said, and Thorin himself have totally realized that, and he wants to change that. I don't think anyone here wants a vanilla Thorin. I think that would be really boring, and I don't think we're going to get that. But there's a limit between making really sharp analysis and really sharp observations about what happens in the game, or about certain actions that people take within our industry, and then go on to what I would almost call name calling. And one of them is really eloquent, and one of them brings value, and some of the other stuff doesn't. So why don't we just go focus on the stuff that brings value without necessarily being so toxic?
Yeah, that's fair
And
enough.
we're not trying to restructure anything or reinvent ourselves, but we came to a realization that, hey, something was off and we need to correct that. And to your point, Stephen, it took a lot of people to tell us that. Maybe we should listen better, but it was definitely a wake-up call. We're trying to react to that more than we're necessarily trying to win, some PR war or something. We're just trying to do the right thing, and this, to me, feels like it's the right thing.
Okay, fair enough. Any last comments, guys? Last comments on this topic? We spent like an hour on this topic.
All right,
It
I've
was
got
worth an hour. It was worth
Reggie.
an hour.
Yeah, we knew we
Yeah,
were
we
gonna
knew it
know,
was gonna
right?
spend an hour.
Reggie's on Skype. He wants to come in. Can I drag him in?
Seriously?
No,
He's
it's
joking.
fucking-
Golly.
What a joke. What a jokester. Wow, Steven.
been good.
How funny.
I would have been shocked if Reggie. Was
That
actually
might
on
have
Skype.
elevated us ahead of Summoning Insight as best talk show. That would have been good.
Why is it that in
Race.
Thorin's apology, why did he say that he made the remark based on appearance? The remark was intended as a joke, but on reflection, I would agree that it is unprofessional and unnecessary to make fun of an individual on the basis of something they have no control over, such as their appearance.
Oh boy.
Well,
I don't know, man.
it's probably the most logical thing you've said all evening, Stephen. But I still
I
think
mean,
you're right.
I was looking for the
Kim-
intentions there for the that great movie reference, but
God. All right. Well, Kim, thanks for stopping by, man. I know you're super busy.
thank you.
Yeah,
And I
cheers,
appreciate
Kim, man.
you.
Thanks a lot.
Are you
man.
having fun at E3, man?
You're welcome. No, actually, I've been fucking
He's not
locked up
having
in a
any
hotel
fun.
room for 2 days being sick, so
Oh.
I haven't
that's
even
the
touched the
worst.
show floor yet.
That's horrible, man. We'll get well soon. It's
You,
supposed
you,
Thank you.
you obviously watched the Summoning Insight as well, then.
No, I actually
I was
didn't.
joking.
All right, man. Take care, dude.
All the best.
Take
brother.
care, guys.
Right.
Cheers.
Bye.
I have to piss before Dota talk, so let's please.
Yeah,
All right, let's take a break.
I thought I saved it at the end with a joke. I thought I saved it.
Saved
You brought
it
it back. You brought it back.
Yeah, he definitely
Thanks.
brought it back. All right, guys, we'll talk a little bit about Dota and do some Q&A right after this break. So we'll be right back.
Ladies.